Christie. Okay, so good afternoon to everyone for the Transit Advisory Committee meeting. The first item on the agenda is the roll call. I don't have my agenda. That's an old.
That's an old one.
Yeah,
I just
but
brought
it's
all my
roll
stuff.
call.
Don't look at that.
And we have three members of the advisory committee.
Kim Moore present.
Will,
I am present.
he is present. Joyce Parker.
Here's the
Okay.
agenda.
And then we
Pretty
have
straightforward.
Ken Anderson from AATA here as well. So that's number one on the agenda. The second item on the agenda is related to a discussion and consideration of one-time projects. And just for background information, the advisory committee presented their report to the Board of Trustees. And during that meeting, it was brought to our attention that there are funds available in the event that the millage passes to look at one-time improvements, capital improvements related to transit. And so the board requested that the committee meet to discuss how we might be able to utilize some of those dollars out of our fund balance. And so that's the purpose of the meeting today, to get that process underway, to maybe talk about how we may want to proceed with coming up with recommendations in that area.
Can I ask you, when you say fund balance, you mean fund balance from the existing millage?
Yes, from the existing millage. And so basically with the existing millage, there's
Do you know what that amount is?
what I'm estimating that we could use out of the fund balance is maybe around 500,000 in total. There's a fund balance reserve policy that the township have in place, so we need to retain some of those dollars for that purpose. And then I think because our expenses in some years may be more than revenue coming in, if the millage passes, there may be a need to maybe hold back an additional amount. So I'm estimating about 500,000
To be used.
to be used, yes.
So the
Well, that's quite a bit of money. I mean,
It
that's
is.
a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
hello.
I'm sorry.
That's right, we just got started. So I guess my question is, what do you think, Joyce, the board is sort of expecting back from this committee, like a list of priorities? Or?
Maybe, maybe a list of priorities would be good. I think the other part of it, I know we've received letters from residents from time to time about certain things they would like to see take place. And maybe that's an area that we could discuss as well. And then I was thinking, once we put together the list, I did request an opinion from our township attorney as far as giving us some parameters, but so far I have not received a response back. But if we put together that list, I'm thinking they probably should review it, our attorney, just to make sure that it's within the ballot language that was approved for the original millage.
Say that again, Joyce, I'm sorry.
Okay, so.
Opinion would say what?
Well, what I had stated is that, once we put together our list, we probably should have, the township attorney review it and compare that with the ballot language to make sure that we're within compliance of what was actually approved by voters.
So on November 3rd, 2015, the ballot proposal that was approved was shall the limitation on the amount of taxes which may be imposed on taxable property in the township of Scio, County of Washington, Michigan be increased by 0.3627 mil or 0.3627 cents, I guess, per $1,000 of taxable value for a period of 10 years, 2015 to 2024, inclusive, for the purpose of providing funds for public transportation services in Scio Township. It is estimated that 0.3627 mils would raise approximately $403,000 when first levied. So I guess the question is, what will the attorneys say we could do in
Right.
terms of capital improvements?
It's a broad
Is,
phrase, transportation services, certainly bus signs, shelters and all that. are-
shelters might be included, things that are directly
Yeah.
related
That's my off
to
the cuff.
providing
thing.
that. That's what I would think too. But, you know,
But don't hold me to that.
okay, all right.
Your Scio council, no.
Well, maybe we should just sort of continue what Kim started and brainstorm some things that might be capital improvements that could possibly be included. So you mentioned bus shelters.
Yeah, that came up. And I think we received letters, a couple of letters from residents.
Yeah, we
of
got-
Bus shelters. I was trying to see. if
Yeah,
that-
one from, email from Ladina from Service of Wagner.
Right, he raised a whole bunch of concerns about pedestrian safety, I guess. But mostly, I think it was related to the bus stops. And I think there's two, one on Wagner and one on Dexter Ann Arbor. Am I remembering that correctly?
Is that
The other
same-
one was Miss Wheeler, expand service along Stabler. I'm trying to bring up the documents now.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I have my copies here too.
Those are the only two that I.
Yes, I
How
guess the
much,
question,
what's the fund balance that you're looking to spend down?
well,
And how much of the balance, I guess, do you want to
Yeah.
spend down?
I think what we're looking at is approximately $500,000.
Okay,
And I think the other consideration that we should look at is whether the millage passes or not, because if it doesn't, those dollars could be used at least to fund transit, you know, another year.
mhm,
So this is from Michael Wheeler, and he wanted to expand the AAT route further west on Jackson Road. to help Scio residents. And then the other one that was about way, so.
So is Wheeler, am I remembering correctly, he's in like Scio Farms area?
I don't know if this email says. The address is North Sea Road.
Oh. So
Oh.
he's on the other side of Jackson.
You know what? This is an email that you forwarded to us.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so this is for the Scio Township. So the email doesn't say where.
Oh,
And then the other one was,
So does it state what he's requesting?
he just wanted service further out Jackson, right?
Oh,
the Stabler Road.
the Stabler, okay.
And this is the one Jared Ledvina.
Yeah, he lives on Cherry Wood Lane.
He wanted, Wagner Dexter's intersection warrants a line item on multiple budgets, have a few specific. Engineering study to extend the sidewalks from Jackson Ave north.
And that can't happen really.
Install bus stops for Route 31
North
stations
Wagner.
in North Wagner and Dexter Ann Arbor. Explore connecting Dexter Ann Arbor to Ann Arbor City sidewalk.
That
Blow your whole budget right there.
Well, it could, I mean, in theory, I looked at this, I drove out there and looked at it, because it's not far from my house. If we were to excuse me, put in sidewalks so that you could, have bus shelters. And I think there are 2 stops. I think there's one on Wagner and one on Dexter and Arbor. You could, it wouldn't be that much, I think, to connect to the sidewalk that exists on the highway overpass. So there is an existing sidewalk on the highway overpass for Dexter and Arbor Road. And it extends all the way to Arbor Landings. But then it stops.
Is that,
And at that point, there's no sidewalk until you get to, I think, David Road,
What, Wagner?
Dexter and Arbor.
yeah. And
Wagner, you can't do because, though there's 2 highway overpasses. And, only one of them has sidewalk. The other one, is tight up against the road. There's hardly any shoulder at all. And there's no sidewalks in between them either. So that's a lot of sidewalk and, the problem that we encountered, I think we would encounter a similar problem because it would require making a change to an overpass. And MDOT's already told us, when we asked about the Zeke Road overpass, that we can't touch them to make any kind of pedestrian safety.
So we could pay for paving sidewalk and put a bus stop right there on Wagner.
Yes,
Just as the bus turns left onto Wagner.
we could make it safer for people who are waiting for buses at those 2 bus stops. And we could create a pedestrian connection to the existing sidewalk over the overpass on Dexter and Arbor Road.
Where's the other bus stop you were thinking? The 2 bus stops?
Well, I think if you look on a map, and I didn't double check this, by, making an observation in person there, but I know there's one bus stop on Wagner near Elizabeth.
We're talking about the same area.
Right,
We're talking
yes.
about the same
So
area.
there's one bus stop there. There's no bus shelter, but there's a bus stop. And I think there's another bus stop on Dexter and Arbor Road.
At the landing.
Well, I think it's heading into town, right? Isn't it?
There's one at the landing when
Is
you're
it-
going outbound, headed to
Am
Wagner.
I right in
There's
that?
one inbound?
I think there is.
There's one
Is there?
outbound too at the landing.
So there, what do you mean by the landing?
that apartment complex.
Arbor Landings Apartments right there at 14 and.
Yeah, there's stops in both directions there, but that is a long way away from the intersection.
So there's not a stop, a
So
second
the bus
stop?
stop that's on Wagner serves Ann Arbor, Dexter Road and Wagner. You wouldn't have one just before the light and then another one around the corner. Cause it kind of slows the bus down.
Well,
So Ken, do you have any opinion, as far as the stops and whether there's a need to look at shelters or anything to make it safe, more safe?
Give you some numbers. So building off of what Will said, and I think in this particular case, you'd have to have the council look at this, but I think you could, from what Ypsilanti Township has done in other cases like this, if you connect a sidewalk to crosswalks at the intersection, that's usually good enough to be considered a network at that point. But I don't know in this particular case, based on ridership, if you really want to pursue that.
Okay. You don't have that many riders.
Let me.
So does the township right there, I know we zig around going east, our boundary line. But is our line at Wagner, at Dexter and Arbor Road, the township boundary?
no, the township, it's the freeway ring. So we, township has all of, everything to the west of M14.
Okay, so that's.
So it includes that corner. In fact, we've had a property owner who now owns that parcel, it's the triangle right there. And was trying to figure out how to build a house on it. That's not really gonna work, but that's a separate issue.
Okay,
But it's in the township.
okay, so but that's already covered because there's 2 stops, eastbound, westbound on Arbor Landing.
One on,
Ann Arbor, Dexter
Here's what
Road.
there's one on
See, I see a stop right here.
here, and then there's one over here on Wagner's. There's one on the inbound over here, and then there's one over here.
I mean, if you just,
So where's the Arbor Landings is here,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
bus stop here, and I was thinking there was one across the street.
there is.
They're,
Okay.
they're right in front of our. So
Okay, so there's those.
They're further
This
down.
is all covered by this stop, is what I'm trying to say. You're not gonna wanna slow the bus down by stopping here and then having to get over.
There is
At the
a,
red
there,
light.
there is a stop here, I think, for the bus coming back this way. And this is the stop for the bus going that way.
Oh, okay.
So I think there's a stop on this
Does the
side,
bus go
where
that way?
Elizabeth. And then I think there is a stop here,
Mhm.
and
And
it's
you're-
certainly shown on this
And
map.
you're thinking you want a bus stop there?
No, I'm not talking about adding additional bus stops. I'm talking about maybe adding a shelter.
Shelter, okay.
I'm gonna say definitely don't put shelters out there.
Why is that?
Here's the list of stops. And so this is ranked from ridership all the way down. This one is, it's not even in the top half, it's down toward the bottom, so. I'm gonna, if you want your money to go a little bit farther at this point, and there's a lot more money sitting out there than I thought.
Right.
The most benefit that you're going to get, as far as improving accessibility and for the largest amount of riders is putting connecting lead walks in at existing stops.
What's the lead walk?
So a lead walk is if the sidewalk isn't up against the curb, it's the connecting walk.
Oh, it's like a
No, it's
little,
the-
it's like a
like-
little, it's
Oh,
stem,
Instead of having grass there, you
Okay.
have a little walkway.
like a little concrete extension.
Yep, it's so right now, stops with shelters, there's 31 stops in the township. 5 of them have shelters, but that covers 57% of the ridership. So that's, that's a lot of bang for the buck for a pretty small investment.
Mhm.
So,
So
so I think we're,
sidewalks with, what did you call it again? Lead?
Lead walks, LEAD.
So how many of those would benefit, the various locations? How many locations are we talking about? Is that something you might know, or do you need to maybe go back and do
So
something?
there's 27. Okay. There are 31 stops total, and I could put this into a nicer chart.
Okay,
and then make it
that would-
available.
yeah,
That would
There's
be great.
31 stops total. 27 of them currently have a sidewalk, which is actually really good.
so
The lead
how many,
27
27?
have.
So that's just have a sidewalk
sidewalk.
running near them,
How many stops? 31?
31 total. 27 of them have a sidewalk.
Mhm.
9 of those stops that have a sidewalk have a lead walk. So that gives us a gap of 18
Mhm.
that you could put lead walks in. But I think this is where you probably need to have an engineering consultant come in and look in because, a small lead walk that's something, by like 8 by 6 or something like that, that could run a couple $1,000s, but and I thank you very much for the stops that were put in on, Upland down by Snowberry, but you guys found out that if there's a culvert or something, there's a ditch or something like that, that cost goes up significantly.
Yeah,
So
that was the change order that we had to do to fix that grading in order to extend the lead walk, I guess, out.
and so what I could do is give a list, of those stops from highest light ridership down to lowest ridership that have the opportunity for that. And then the contractor could go in and just make some estimates to see, if it's only gonna cost a couple $1,000s to put in the lead walk, that feels like a good investment. But if it's gonna take, $50,000 to fill in a ditch, I guess you guys will have to make a decision at that point.
So,
what you
so
wanna
would a
do.
contractor or an engineer be able to give us an estimate for each one of these, 18 of them, and then we can kind of decide what
Yeah.
might be most cost effective?
So this is existing stops that have a sidewalk.
Okay.
Are there existing stops that don't have a sidewalk?
2 of them are the ones that we were just talking about.
Right.
And then there are just,
And it sounds like those two are not the best, it wouldn't be the best use of the funding, that's what you're thinking.
No, we want one over at on Wagner.
I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna weigh in on that.
We don't want one in
Well-
Wagner?
Well, what Ken had said earlier is that the ridership is very low. So you may not get, the impact of the use of those dollars.
I would want you to drill down on that. I mean, so tell me this, what's the ridership difference between people that get on at Scio Ridge and Wagner? Because Wagner, one of the deals with Wagner is that it's very remote. So you're sitting out there in the dirt, in the dark early in the morning and that kind of thing.
Well, would we
So
get,
it's a safety issue
yeah,
as
we
well.
did a safety issue, but would we also get potentially, more riders if people felt like there was a better place to wait for the bus there too?
I'm gonna say from other experience, with that being severely low density, not necessarily. So, like the Meyer stop, that's 56 people a day. You're talking for the stop out, the inbound stop at Dexter and Wagner is 1.5 people a day.
Oh,
So,
that's a big
I kind of thought, I guess I thought it was more
Yeah.
ridership than that.
so most of the ridership is on Jackson Road. I mean, it drops off pretty significantly. It goes from 55, well, I guess this makes sense, because Meyer, but then it drops down to like Jackson and April Road, 6 riders, and then it goes down to Jackson and Burton 5, and then Jackson and Zeeb 5, and then it just, it slowly tapers down from there. But
And how many people ride from Scio Ridge?
Scio Ridge and Chase, where Chris rides in from, that's 15 people a day. And then the next biggest one is Jackson and Parkland, and then they drop into the single digits after that.
And that's the line bus, right?
Yeah.
How many people in Parkland? Getting on and off?
Well,
Now, Parkland has now a bus shelter that the DDA put in at the intersection with Jackson.
did he find, I'm sorry, I can't remember the media. He find you, he sent us a message about a week and a half ago saying that they had additional funds to spend on things, but he wasn't sure if he really wanted to invest in more shelters for the exact same reasons that we're talking about here. And so he had asked questions about what's going on with the millage. So I wrote him a message, saying, here's what the committee's been working on. Contact Joyce to find out if there's opportunities to coordinate. So I can contact you.
No.
Okay.
That's all right. I've been sending back and forth text messages with him today. I'll try and close the loop.
So he might have a little bit more
Okay.
lucky.
Yeah, okay.
So the other thing that comes up is, Marie, do you have places you would need connecting lead walks and stuff put in further out on Jackson?
Not that I've heard from our riders. The only shelter thing, and I mentioned this to you guys before when we did our tour, is that where people wait in Scio Farms, and where we pick them up is not where the shelter is. The shelter is out by the main road, of course, but people will wait inside the
Complex.
the complex. They wait inside where the,
Benches.
what's what I'm looking for, the mailboxes, the building where the mailboxes are.
So
So
if
they
it's
can
a
go
raining day, they would
Rainy.
wait, that's just what they're used to being picked up.
Yeah.
So they could,
So is there a need to do anything or just allow them to continue to do that? Because it sounds like they're used to doing it.
Mhm.
well, if they want to stand out there, but see, we can't put a bus stop in there.
Well, that was the problem that we encountered, as I finally remembered. We wanted to put a shelter, I think, inside somewhere in the Scio Farms complex, but we just ran into difficulties with the ownership.
Mhm.
So we put it out in the right of way. When we did our little tour the other day, I thought we talked about possibly changing where they're picked up.
Right, yeah.
We just have to reorient people so that they actually waited in the shelter instead of waiting where they're used to waiting.
Mhm.
What about Jackson and Woodview?
Woodview Commons, the new development, they're supposed to have a shelter. I think the township is supposed to put it there for them, though. They've given us the money for
Oh, okay.
a shelter,
So that's covered.
right?
Okay,
So we have, I think, $30,000 from Woodview Commons, which may be more than it costs to build a shelter. With the additional cost that may be there for, you know, sidewalk and so on, maybe it will reach that.
What about at IHA? Westbound,
We do have one there now.
there's a shelter there.
So the.
Yeah.
So we're doing a
shelters-
lot better than what we thought.
At least the DDA shelters.
Yeah.
that were-
A question, sorry, I was late.
You late.
I was really late. I did text you, you probably didn't get
Yeah.
it. But anyway, did anyone talk about possibly adding bus or bicycle hoops at the shelters as an option?
No, we didn't
Oh,
talk about that, but that's,
It's a great idea.
that's a good idea.
I mean, what you can have a contractor do is they can break out, so if you just have a lead walk put in, you know, he can give you that they can give you the price of what a lead walk is, but if you want a shelter installed on top of that, they can also give you the pricing for the concrete pad for that the shelter sits on, and then I can give you what the cost of our shelter plus a bench is. And so that way you would know if we just put in a connecting walk, it would be this much, but if you want to spend a little bit more, you know, you can make the estimations, whether it's worth putting shelters in at places too.
And I think we had a price for adding the bicycle hoops, because environmental task force, yeah, what, had
So do we have, any-
tried to do that before.
yeah, do we have any pricing on what it would cost to do that?
We did, but that was back when the DDA was installing them.
What was that?
Yeah.
And what year was that?
It's was it a couple years ago?
Okay, and how much did it cost? How many hoops? I mean, guesstimate, what was?
I don't remember.
Can you, any thought on that, what the cost might be for something like that?
So my rough estimates, because I can't find it because I need it today. Our rough estimate was if you just wanted to do if we wanted to do a lead walk, our average estimate was $5,000 to $7,000, but then when you added a full pad and a shelter and a bench on top of there, it went up to somewhere around $20,000. Like 15 to 20, depending on the size of the shelter and that stuff, but I can get more concrete.
Well, that's without bike hoops. So you weren't here, and we have $500,000 to play with.
Well, potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
Something Joyce pointed out that if the millage renewal doesn't pass, $500,000 would be enough to pay for
Pay for a full year.
close to a year of
Service.
purchase of service with
Yeah.
Right.
AATA. So we probably don't want
The
to,
timing should be, yes.
we don't want to commit to do anything with that until we know what's happened with the millage renewal.
Yeah.
Which isn't that far out.
Right.
So $500 wouldn't get us through 2025.
500,000.
500,000, I
Yes.
apologize. Would not, I think the figure was 580.
Right, that's why I qualified by saying it's close to.
Oh,
what it would
yeah,
take.
I got you.
It's-
Yeah.
okay.
It's certainly closer. So this is another thing, I saw this, and I wanted to ask you about it, I thought but there's, kind of this, smaller size bus shelter, does that make a difference?
Yeah, it's a few $1,000s cheaper.
Yeah, cause, I noticed this as I was walking around Ann Arbor, and,
Is that just in the city?
yeah, this was something I saw in the
That's
city.
kind of cute.
Cute little bus shelter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I noticed that there's sort of an option that's smaller,
Mhm.
and that might be more appropriate for Scio Township because I'm guessing we rarely fill one of those big bus shelters. That's sort of more.
But the DDA ones are small.
Right,
No, when I send the pricing and the specifications and that over for those,
Yeah,
I believe that one's a 5 foot by 10 foot, and then we have 6 feet by 12 feet, but I agree with you, I think those would be
Yeah.
appropriate size for over
okay,
here.
that's,
So we could stretch our dollars, in terms of bus shelters if, we went to a more modest size bus shelter.
Do we want to think about, and this is kind of hard to plan for because we don't know with these projects not having been built, what the demand is going to be. But I wonder if you think we should have a bus stop at Heritage Woods on Baker.
Well, that would be at least for the foreseeable future, that would be a wave stop.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
What do you think, Marie?
Yeah.
Well, they,
It's hard to predict right now. We don't know. I mean, they have transportation within the senior citizen tower, we'll call it, two-story tower. But what are there duplexes in there? I think that's it. Is it all duplex?
I think it's a variety of different types of housing.
Okay,
And that's my recollection.
so they're, okay.
And I also recall that one of the community benefits that Heritage Woods promised is money towards pedestrian improvements. So I think the figure was $100,000, and that would, I think the intent was to try and create more pedestrian sort of safety along Baker Road. And if you did that, presumably that would be the point at which to add a bus shelter.
So,
I guess yeah, along, although that's quite a hike from Baker back into.
Well, they have to build a pathway
Out.
internal to as part of their development.
Right.
That's not that, so the $100,000 is on top of that, but that should come all the way out to Baker. It's just that once you get to Baker, there's no
There's
sidewalk
nothing
there. There's nothing there, and
Which is a part of our transportation grant ask.
yes, well.
so we talked a lot about buses when we met with Marie. We did that ride along Jackson Road corridor. And it seems like we're pretty solid with the bus stops for AHA right now, but we're kind of all over the map about bus stops for Wave. And I'm of the view that we put it there and they shall come. In other words, if, like, for instance, there's no bus stop for Wave at IHA. And I presume that Wave could put their little bus stop on that post. Why have two separate posts? That doesn't even make sense, but,
Well, isn't there a shelter there? IJ, yeah.
I know, but I don't think there's a Wave stop.
Can't you
That
use-
would be a good
Can't they
place
use
to
the same
look.
one?
Right, she's saying we put our sign with
They're all
their
with
sign, so
AA.
we're.
So you know that bus
Cool.
services
Yeah.
stop there.
Oh, so you're not currently stopping at IHA?
No, there's no sign for Wave. There's not a lot of signs for
Well, it
Wave
sounds
along
like-
Jackson, and IHA stop is
There,
one of them.
There's no sign.
Yeah, we stop in the, we
Yeah.
stop in the area, and then we also stop, if somebody needs to get off along wherever we're driving and it's safe to pull over, we'll stop, but yeah, having.
So
us
there's no
put our
stop
sign-
at IHA. And I think that there should be stops so that people know that there's a service there. And we can kind of pick a couple places along Jackson Road. Like there should be a Wave sign at the Meyer stop. There should be, because their visibility is important in terms of educating people about transportation. So that's just one of the areas I thought of, the IHA. Another one could be down the road at,
Well, I'm confused. I thought what we were trying to accomplish was sort of not redundancy so much as, AATA having its fixed route running, sort of west to Meyer, and then Wave connecting at Meyer to create fixed route
there's
service.
redundancy.
So,
There's overlap. The Jackson Road corridor goes from Parker Road all the way down to Jackson to Parkland. Parkland Plaza?
Yeah.
Parkland Plaza, just east of IHA.
right,
So there is an overlap of the services. But if you were a person wanting to go to Scio Farm, you wouldn't get on the AATA bus. You could and still walk home, but you would, knowing that there's a Wave stop there, you would wait for the right bus. There are many routes that overlap each other. You wait for the right bus, so you go right to your
so,
complex.
so since Wave, so I guess I remember now from our little bus tour with Wave. So because of the overlap, there's kind of an additional service, I guess you could say, for riders.
Yep.
So riders who want to go west, or
East.
east
Mhm.
from some point beyond the Meyer stop
Mhm.
might make use of Wave rather than AATA because it's more efficient for them
Mhm.
than having to get off at Meyer and switch carriers.
So for instance, the connector route that goes out to Chelsea, it also covers Jackson Road. It comes out of Baker, turns left, goes down Jackson Road all the way to Parkland Plaza, okay? Comes through there and then comes out and starts westbound. So that a wave signs would be there. Some people might want to get on that because they want to get off on Baker Road.
And the value of having the sign there is that then people could look at the Wave schedule and not just at the AATA schedule.
Correct.
And sort of make a plan
Yes,
for how they were gonna
yes,
meet their transportation.
right.
One other thought on spending money would be, could we develop a publication that says public transit in Scio? That combines both routes, a map and links, maybe QR codes or something to the links in the schedules. It can go on the website, it can go in papers, it could be updated. And
That's
because
a
I think
great
that would
idea.
really help.
Yes, that's a
know.
great idea. It's kind of like in Arborland. Many buses go into Arborland. Some of them go out Huron Parkway to Plymouth. Some of them go Washtenaw downtown. Some of them go Washtenaw Ipsy. Some of them go the 6, does all kinds of different stuff now from when I used to drive. So, yeah,
Well, and that even because there's a potential, I suppose, that the township attorney might push back and say capital improvements, you can't do that. I can see that happening because it does say transportation
More
services
education.
in the ballot language.
right.
But what you're describing, I think.
It's a description of
is-
services.
It's services, it's, information about services.
Absolutely.
Well, you could maybe even take it a step further just to promote transit services. Because we don't really do a lot in that regard, so a lot of people are not aware of what is provided and, what the cost is and whether it's something that they can actually use. So, I do think we should look at something like that.
And I think that the
Visual
bus-
helps
yeah.
people.
And I think that the bus stops for
Communicate.
waves,
Uh-huh.
for waves, for instance, at that IHA westbound, there should be 2, one for the Jackson Road and a map showing where it goes and the stops along the way, or at least a map showing how it goes to Parker. And then the other one, the community connector, has a different, it turns left on Baker.
Does the ride still mount the maps inside the shelters? No,
It's just.
because it's all online now.
Yeah, and every stop now has a text my bus number,
Oh.
so you can get that. It obviously doesn't tell you where it goes, it just says when your next bus is coming. But it just, we did our best to keep up with that, but then having 1,200 stops and probably 400 of them had maps, it just became a huge problem. That's worse.
But it might work okay with, some of the wave stuff.
Yeah, we keep our buses stocked with everything, and then I have some stuff for you guys to put out here too.
So let me see if I can interpret what you were saying. Are you concerned about there's a split like we have between operational and capital budgets and then what comes out of what you can pay for with each?
Well, I'm thinking the question that Joyce has posed to the township attorney that we haven't heard back from yet, and that is what is the township permitted to do with this money
Okay,
based on the ballot language that the voters approved in 2015, because it's a surplus from that millage. And, we have to make sure that we're spending it in, alignment with the language of the ballot proposal.
okay.
But
I
also,
could just imagine them coming back and saying, well, it says services, it doesn't say structures.
right, but also you guys come to these meetings and said you couldn't do certain things, so it falls back on us and we don't know what the DDA is gonna do. So I mean, like we talked about the shelter issue before in Wagner. And it presented all kind of political problems for you guys, so I think that's what I felt like as a part of this committee was that some things were gonna have to fall on us because you couldn't do it. i.e. a shelter at a certain place, so it had to have a certain amount of ridership and.
We don't have to comply with the standards that the AAH.
No, I'm talking to
established.
Ken.
Yeah,
Ken did, that got us thinking
Right.
about what our needs are gonna need to be.
I'm thinking just a hoop and a concrete pad might be a couple $1,000s, something like that.
well, one area. that-
Especially if it was, well, done if it was a one-off, no, but if it was done with a group of things or other work.
Well, the one thing to sort of bear in mind is that the DDA has already established that it is supportive of making pedestrian improvements in the DDA district for bus riders and pedestrians. And so I probably should coordinate any kind of capital improvement plan with the DDA to make sure that we're not sort of spending money from the millage where they were already planning on spending
Sure.
money that's in a sense being collected as if it would have gone to the millage, right? Because they're capturing the tax increment financing. So it makes sense for them to put that back in, on one level anyway. So it may make sense to sort of narrow for this purpose to areas where bus riders aren't in the DDA district.
Is that just along Jackson Road then?
Jackson Road would be the area that's in the DDA district. It does sort of bump out, it's various ways, but the bus route is pretty much along Jackson. However, we have these other loops where they're outside of the DDA. So the area that Kim is describing, Wagner, if we make some improvements there, that's an area where the DDA is unable to spend money. And likewise, the work that we did to make improvements along Scio Ridge and Upland, that's outside of the DDA district too. And one thing to think about is the second phase of that improvement project on Scio Ridge and Upland Drive. Do we want to look at that area too? I'm guessing that some of those bus stops are on your list because they don't currently have a lead sidewalk or maybe even any sidewalk.
So do you think sidewalks would fall within that category?
I think we could reasonably justify that
Because-
if we wanted to make that proposal.
I kind of disagree to this extent. I think we ought to make a list of what's needed. We're the Transit
Well, yeah,
Advisory Committee.
And then
The
decide.
DDA is like, not coming to you, as part of that. Everybody knows this team is out here going right to them. Oh, this is how we're gonna spend our money. So I'm just saying, I think we should make a list
Yeah.
of what we think is important for our transit system. How it gets covered is another issue.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's
Yeah,
good.
Because I don't think we should be working at cross purposes. That
Yeah, no,
doesn't-
I didn't.
And we
I
should
didn't-
communicate to the board. This is what we believe is important. These are some priorities.
Well,
I'm
And
not
we
in
can share
disagreement
that
with you.
just with the DDA and we can all decide what we want to do to get things done. But
Yeah.
at least that way we know, it can be funded.
Cause
But it's not
I
a
don't have a
priority.
sense of what the DD is
It'll
gonna
be,
do.
they didn't have a plan, they just wanted to know what was going on.
Oh, well, like that's,
And it'll
Cute.
be, the list of stops that I put together with the ridership, it'll be easy enough just to put an extra column that says this is a DDA stop versus
It's in,
non-DDA.
yeah, it's in the DDA.
it's in the DDA district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would inform the board about how that, or
Yeah.
like this bus stop that I was suggesting at Jackson and Woodview, that would be probably covered by the developer as part of the development agreement.
Yes, exactly. Other funding sources could pay for things on the list that we develop. I didn't mean to say that we should not look at them,
Mm.
those areas. I was just thinking in terms of this pot of money from the
Sure.
millage,
Yeah.
it may make sense to think of the stops that are outside of the DDA as being the focus for the use of those funds.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, when we did the tour with Marie, a lot of the items that we talked about, are not like one-time expenditures. And I just wonder, through that process, if there are items that, you know, we can maybe pass on to the DDA because they're not one time, but they're still in the district.
What kind, can you give us some examples?
Well, she had talked about like certain expansions related to routes. And the cost, there was one that you said would not be, you sent an email out.
Mhm.
And you said there wasn't really an expense, but then there was another one where it was more expensive.
Yeah, so it just, if you're adding a stop, the cost of what that is depends on how much time that adds to the loop that we do,
Right,
right? And so if it's adding a stop like IHA that's already along our path, that's super minimal addition. If you wanted the Jackson Road connector to go up on Baker, where currently it's not going,
right.
that adds more time, and so there's more expense. And then, I think as part of that conversation, if we went into the complex, how that adds more time.
Okay,
And so that's, yeah, that's what that is.
So we were talking about the community connector going, well, that's already going on. Baker
Right,
to
just as
cover
an
that.
example on
Okay.
why different stops would cost different
Okay.
things, yeah.
okay.
So,
That's a service cost, not a capital cost.
Right,
Correct.
and that's why I was saying, you know, it wouldn't necessarily be a part of this list, but it
Right.
might be something that we could actually refer to the DDA.
Mm-hmm.
I know as part of our discussion related to expansion of service, we talked about an additional allocation to get us to Baker, I believe. But we didn't really go beyond that. And I think there are some other things that we could do if there was a funding source.
so as I recall, that discussion was about connecting service to the Heritage Woods project on Baker and having to stop there.
Yeah,
And that's when we learned that the community connector goes down there already. And that, I believe, was the memo that Marie, correct me if I'm wrong about this, because this was specific conversation surrounding Marie could provide service to a stop there for an additional 27K.
Yeah.
Round figure,
Yeah,
right, without really knowing what the amount of, because that bus already goes down there, but I think your concern, Marie, was how many people would be getting on per day, which can slow the route down.
well, and I thought the other concern with Heritage Woods is because you are talking about, you know, like elderly people. It might be better to go into the development versus just having a stop on
I don't
Baker.
remember that.
And that was what was expensive.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it just adds more time going into the
Yeah.
complex coming out. And then depending, I don't know a lot about the complex, but if there's more people with walkers or wheelchairs, those take longer to get on the bus as well. And so just a few unknowns for that, as Will mentioned, ongoing service cost when you're ready to add it.
Well, the problem with Heritage Woods is, it's on the, it's a problem, but in terms of DEA funding, it presents an impediment. It's on the west side of Baker, which is outside of the DDA district. The DDA district goes up Baker, but on the east side of Baker to the
Okay,
business park up there.
To Marshall,
Yeah, near Marshall, yeah.
gotcha. Okay. So, so right now I have bus shelters, bus stops, lead walks connecting to the sidewalk at a bus stop, bike hoops at stops, concrete pad for shelters, publication map for transit services regarding AATA and WAVE. And with regard to bus stop, and I'll say that list again if anybody needs, it's pretty fast. With regard to bus stops, there's been a lot of, we don't pay for you to put bus stops out along Jackson Road, right?
Right.
We don't pay for that. Do we pay you to put bus stops, signs out on Jackson Road?
Not that I've found.
Okay, so we just need to identify for you where we want the stops. Okay, so that's a big thing. We need to know where you want the stops, and I think that was the point of our
tour.
writing, our tour.
Yeah,
We really didn't hone in on where we want the stops. I kind of said a couple places, but I don't think that there was consensus about that, so.
I tried to keep a list. I
I
remember on our tour, I tried
Yeah.
to note where we pointed to different places.
yeah, I
and
thought
said,
we looked at certain areas. I don't know if, Marie, did you kind of document those areas?
A couple of them, but Will had the best notes. I was
Okay.
watching all of you take notes, and Will had the best notes, so.
Okay.
So good at that.
Yeah.
I don't know. But in any case, it just seemed like there was a lot of good ideas and I was trying to capture them. And so.
No, that's great.
I think,
So should we get that to Marie or?
well, I guess the question is, what's the best way to sort of pull this together? So that, cause I think where we're headed is a list that we could probably circulate and then, look at it. We could just share it online and get further input to refine it before we bring it back to the board. But I think we also might want to have a preliminary step where we have a conversation with the DDA. Because if the DDA is interested, it has funds, and I think that's probably true on both counts, then that should be part of the information, I think, that comes back to the Board of Trustees, so that there's
Sure.
a kind of sense of what the potential is for.
No, I completely agree, but I think that telling Marie where we want the bus stops, we don't need DDA, that's
No,
just
no.
along Jackson Road.
Yeah, but we need to sort of have
Oh.
lots of input coming in to confirm whatever list that we have, that it's meeting the needs of both WAVE and AATA in terms of what, because the last thing we want to do is put in bus shelters where it doesn't make sense.
No,
Where
stop.
someone's
Plus
not
WAVE.
stopping or people aren't waiting or,
Right.
No, I'm
Or
talking
you don't
about
really
wave
have-
bus stops,
You don't really have the numbers either.
yeah.
not shelters, wave bus stops along Jackson Road. That's what
Well,
I'm
I
talking
think
about.
our entire list, we should be vetting to
So,
make sure that it meets the service, it aligns with the
Yeah.
service that's being provided.
so
So I'm asking you this question, because I'm missing you completely.
Okay,
I don't understand why there's a resistance to giving the list of where we want bus stops to WAVE so they can get them out on Jackson Road. That has nothing to do with AATA or the DDA.
Are you just talking about signage?
We're talking about bus stops, yeah.
oh, well, the notes I shared, I mean, I can share them again. I thought we were still talking about this larger list.
Well, I'm
Different
talking about the
things.
list, but I'm talking about one specific item right now, bus stops.
So I think there's a couple of things maybe we should do. And I do think we should have at least one more meeting after we communicate by email to make sure that we're all on the same page, because Ken was gonna put together some information related to, the shelters, what we have, the sidewalks, where we might have the, opportunities for the lead walks. So we need that information from him. And then I think between Will and Marie, the additional stops associated with WAVE that we discussed when we went on the tours.
I never got that list.
I didn't either. That's why I'm thinking we need that information, need Ken's information.
Okay,
And then we should at least come back together for one more meeting to kind of finalize what we want to put in a report.
and with that in mind, people should be thinking about where they want bus hoops to go,
Right, we should think about that.
locations of bus hoops.
And then.
I'm sorry, bike hoops.
Yeah. And then the other thing, getting back to Jan's comment about some publication or maps that really describe the services and a way we can promote transit and everything. Maybe the other thing is looking at the signage to determine whether it's adequate or if there's more that's necessary to promote what we're trying to do. Because we do want people to ride the bus. And Ken had mentioned earlier in our earlier meetings that the ridership was down. It's growing, but it's slowly growing. So are there some things that we can do to really promote public transportation in the township and really share information?
And, in thinking about the 500K, if we are not gonna use that, maybe that's money that should be given back to taxpayers.
Or reduce the amount over time. Yep.
Give it back to taxpayers. I'm just gonna say, that's another idea you got, Joyce, but my idea is give it back to the taxpayer.
Another option would be to possibly jumpstart a Go Pass program.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that would be another thing that would
Mhm.
presumably.
Now, that was supposed to be in connection with the,
With the businesses
DDA.
like the
With the
DDA.
DDA, but there may be some upfront, one-time
Like a pilot.
startup costs, or a pilot, that could
Yeah,
be too,
or,
and get.
or a grant to really assist businesses to get that process underway.
Yeah, there need to be a commitment with the DDA, that, because you wouldn't, unless there was a total failure, that you'd want them to commit to, doing it, but I would think that there might be some upfront costs in starting, a whole program.
Yeah.
this is the problem with different separate little groups handling the issue of transportation. Is like, and your words are not lost on me, Will, is that we need to sit down with the DDA. Because I feel like we're spinning our wheels, chatting, and, we're not gonna get very far. And I for one, don't wanna go back before the Board of Trustees again without some concrete, well thought out idea about the charge for which we were given, which had to do with fiscal analysis and forecasting for 5 years, as well as a budget projections and revenue expenditure projections to provide services. That's
right.
pretty specific charges.
You're right. Thank you for reminding us that other part of this was to provide that kind of projection for what the costs are anticipated to be. And I think we were looking to AATA to sort of extend, if
Give us that
possible, what the
information.
purchase of service, because that's the biggest cost, right?
And Forrest, okay, I'll double check with him.
Yeah,
Thought we'd said that, but if we haven't, I will do that.
well, you did give it to us for, I think it was over a 3-year period, but not like
Probably
over
10.
10 years.
24, 25,
Yeah.
25, 26.
Okay,
Very good. point.
okay.
I was gonna cover that in other, but I'm just saying it kind of leads to how we dive into these issues, and some people aren't at the table that need to be, and just
Yeah.
Well, that might be a bigger discussion too, beyond what we're charged with doing.
Well, I can tell you that, while the DDA in general is very supportive of spending on transportation on bus, improvements and service. They haven't thought this through. So we would be sort of initiating that conversation with them.
Gotcha.
We do know that we have, in addition to the money from Woodview Commons, we have the promise of a bus shelter from the Lithia project.
Oh, okay.
That one is not specific to a particular location.
Oh, really? It's
Yeah.
not in front of their
Right.
establishment?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think they necessarily want to have a bus stop right in front of their.
Well, I think it was also, we don't want to just willy-nilly say a bus stop here, a bus stop here, because they need to be connected. And in places where, hopefully, we can do a crosswalk and.
Oh,
those
there's an interesting idea. So, what do you think about, Marie, this is probably way beyond this might be totally beyond the scope of the project and or very expensive, but like, especially on Jackson Road, there are not very many crosswalks in between the intersections.
This is a problem that's been pointed out.
And that's what part of our SEMCOG grant proposal
Yeah.
is supposed to do, is identify, cohesively where it makes sense to do these and make a budget and a phase plan to do it, because then guess who we're gonna turn to?
So,
Well, you turn into me.
Well,
me either.
we got it, the transit has to make lots of friends on the DDA, long-term friends on the DDA.
So I was just thinking about that transit study and using that, but that's kind of gonna be late for our purposes of what we're talking about today. Because I think the board wants us to come back, like we said, 30 days.
Well, they
with the-
said 30 days and I said at the time that's unrealistic, so.
Yeah, it may take us longer to get this stuff.
Okay.
Was something else.
If you send a letter of support to Watts for them to sign too. Okay, great.
Yeah, I sent it to Kim and Murray.
So I think
Right, no, I got it,
Yeah,
but there's
okay.
another group called
you
Watts.
had mentioned earlier.
Oh, well,
Not
I,
the area.
transit study, yes, we got it already.
Okay, great.
Sorry, yeah, we're good, sorry.
About the engineering
Getting all
study
these-
to
All
Yeah.
acronyms, I know, I know.
And then there was
Jackson North, along North Wagner.
the Western business.
Is that something we said?
Install bus stops on Route 31 stations at North Wagner and Dexter. And then explore connecting Dexter, Ann Arbor to Ann Arbor City sidewalk on the south side of the road. So the south side would be the side closest to 14. Well, not closer,
Well,
but closest to Jackson, south side.
yeah, so that's really the only place that makes sense, because that's where the sidewalk is on the overpass. And it extends on the other side of the overpass in Ann Arbor, past Arbor Landings. So there's actually sort of an existing infrastructure to connect to at that point. It just stops before it goes all the way into Ann Arbor along Dexter Ann Arbor Road.
So.
But they're talking now, I think, they said the city about closing some of these sidewalk gaps. I've read about it just recently. So it's possible that, they may be sort of working like the Transcontinental Railroad, working towards each other,
Oh, the golden slab. like-
I was
Would that
just
be
trying to
something
find
that-
out if that's something that we had talked about doing or not, as far as this extending sidewalks from Jackson north along North Wagner.
I know it's all
South
just
Wagner.
money, but I think the engineering design, once they put it together and do the cost estimates, will probably help guide whether it's worth executing or not.
So would we want to consider at least the engineering study?
well, that's,
And then, is this about the sidewalk shelter on Wagner Road, just south of,
Extending the sidewalks.
yeah,
Not the
Wagner,
shelter.
that Wax.
oh, along
Wagner-
Dexter Road,
The
not
Wagner
Wagner.
Dexter intersection, I think, is how we're thinking of it. It's sort of a piece.
So it would go on the south side of Dexter and Arbor Road and connect to the existing sidewalk, and then there's another piece to the sidewalk.
Well, you could create a sidewalk on the other side on the west side of Wagner, kind of
South.
between Elizabeth and
Oh,
Dexter Ann Arbor Road, and then you would have a sidewalk where the other bus stop is.
I have a question. Can school buses use ride bus stops? Because I'm wondering if we put a shelter there, part of the comment was around school bus, kids waiting
Yeah.
for school buses.
Mhm.
So, and
That
I,
actually makes a way stronger case for that out there than.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't.
Yeah,
think-
we do. We share them.
you share them, great.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that would prevent it.
So maybe that's something we should at least think about.
sure.
Because I
I
wouldn't
wouldn't,
know
I didn't know
at
that that
stop.
would be a
I've seen
transit.
groups of people.
These are
Well, the bus
averages,
stop
though.
Yeah.
shelter would definitely be a transit issue, but
Yeah.
There are high use times where there's a group of people waiting for the bus at those bus stops.
It's-
All right, so what's our next step then, just to make sure?
So I got 8 items:
Okay, go ahead, Kim.
bus shelters, bus stops, lead walks, bike hoops, concrete pads, publication map /map, go pass program, and the sidewalk on the south side of Dexter Ann Arbor Road to connect to the existing sidewalk, and on Wagner between Dexter Ann Arbor Road and Elizabeth.
Okay,
And then there's potential also for finishing some portion of the Upland project.
That's number 9. What would we be doing there?
what would we be doing there?
Well, so what we just finished during the last construction season was the sidewalk and including some bus stops along Scio Ridge and Upland, but it stopped before it reached all the way to Scio Church Road. So there's a section of Upland Drive that still lacks sidewalk. There's a sidewalk gap there where there are, I think, 2 bus stops. And
That's
on
on, Upland,
Upland,
before
just
you get to Scio
before
Church.
you get to Scio Church. And then on Scio Church, there's 2 bus stops, I believe. One of them, actually, I was just looking at the Google image, has sidewalk because there's just a little segment of sidewalk in front of the Kirkway, is it, subdivision? I think that's what it's called. That was, built after the planning commission started requiring sidewalks.
Where the condos are at.
Let's see.
Those gray condos, new ones.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's not Kirkway, it's Kensington Woods.
Yeah, Kensington Woods.
Kensington Woods, so they have a little bit of sidewalk and there is a bus stop right there. So, but there's a gap between that sidewalk and Upland Drive.
Hmm.
There's another bus stop further down where there's no sidewalk.
So I'll make notes of that in the chart that I put together. For our purposes, like the Kensington, whatever that one was.
Yeah.
That one is good enough in terms of a bus stop that it's considered a connected sidewalk, even though it only connects to the driveway. So for bus stop purposes, that's good enough to put a lead walk in.
So would a lead walk be
You have to have a
something?
sidewalk in order to put a lead walk.
Yes. So the only places that I have right now that don't have sidewalks is the one that you just described at Scio Church in Oak Valley.
Okay.
And then I don't think this is the correct name of the road, but on the east side of the road, it's Scio Ridge, and they say Sudbury, but I think it's Chamberlain. And then everything else has sidewalks that we can connect to, just like they're a little lengthier.
It looks like there's Snowberry Ridge and Haley Court are the sort of cross streets on Upland Drive where I think there's no sidewalk. It's a little hard to tell from this. I mean, and this is probably outdated now because we've added sidewalk on Scio Ridge and a portion of Upland Drive.
Okay, I'll
All right,
work with my,
so just in terms of timing, should we look at maybe 2 weeks out to get all of the information together?
yeah, I can do that.
Okay,
So this person, that Michael Wheeler that sent the email to you to expand service to Stabler. We already have service on Stabler through Wave. You might want to send them a
Yeah.
follow-up email on that.
And it's, and
Both the connectors.
And the
connect.
increase of frequency of that wave service, that's gonna be done in alignment with AATA, or has that already happened?
It's gonna start June 3rd is when it's gonna start, and it just gives people more opportunity to connect with AATA. It doesn't impact.
So I think that the Marie did some really smart reconfiguring of things. And the bus would run maybe every 20 minutes or every.
It varies between every 20 to 40 minutes.
Right.
But a lot better than every hour. And the 20-minute windows happen more towards the peak times. And the 40 minutes happens more at the beginning of the day or the end of the day where there's less utilization.
And if they wanted to go further, well, they can get all the way to Parkland Plaza, but if they wanted to go in Ann Arbor, they could transfer at Meyer
Right.
to the AATA bus.
And
That's what,
going the other way, depending on which connector it is, it's either connecting up Baker to Dexter and then to Chelsea, or it's connecting to, what's that called, the housing off of, on the other side
Thornton
of
Farm,
Parker.
at Parker, Thornton Farm.
Thornton, that's right, Thornton.
yeah,
And both those connectors, the Jacksonville connector and the Chelsea connector, we call it, go past Stabler, east and west.
Right, it's just at Baker, they sort of split, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So anything from Baker in, you're benefiting, the riders are benefiting from the kind of, the fact that there are two different routes converging here. But it's once you go further west than Baker, you sort of have to make a choice.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other comments or are we all set for today?
So we have
I
a
wanted
meeting
to talk
date
about
for the
other
next-
items.
We didn't look at a meeting date. We were thinking, it
2
might
weeks.
take 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks to get the information. You want to look at another meeting at the end of the 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Maybe sometime in June, early June, probably.
Yeah.
I also wanted, under other, I wanted to talk about this charge stuff before we leave, so however,
Okay,
whatever way you want to deal with it.
go ahead.
First. So after our presentation to the Board of Trustees, I went back and looked at the charge. And I was like, oh, okay, it has specific requirements for us to pay attention to. And so, because, I haphazardly didn't pay attention to that. We spent a lot of time on the service, which we needed to. But this kind of fell through my cracks. So, I spoke with Will a little bit about this. I think the AATA could come up with some kind of 5-year
Projection.
guesstimate.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, this is not unheard of. I imagine they have multi-year budgets that they have to deal with their board. And I think that's something that we should require of them because it's not
That's a
like,
good point.
yeah, we want to be able to, I think one of the points that Jessica Flintoff made was that we shouldn't be collecting more money and having these fund balances. And so if we say, this is what it takes to provide the service, which I have no doubt that it's gonna take more because budgets only go up, they don't go down,
Right.
even in lighter inflationary times. But I just think it makes sense for us to demand that from AATA. And right now, because we don't, our transit dollars don't go to Wave, I would say we would need to demand that for Wave as well. So if we do contract with Wave, we'll be demanding that. We already do that stuff, projections. So,
So we're asking each of the providers.
right now, we're just asking them because they get our Wave dollars, they get our millage dollars.
But it might be helpful for Marie to put something together because I know part of our discussion was actually enhancing services and there was an amount associated with that. So that would help us to know
Okay, some
as we
specificity.
go forward what that cost might be. It's a projection, but it's a plan, it gives us an idea
Yep.
what to expect.
And how it.
So you
how
would
it's
want that
funded.
over 5 years, Joyce?
Probably, we could do it 5 or 10 years, the millage, I think, is 10 years.
Sure, we're only required to do 5, but okay.
Yeah,
Well, we need to be clear what we want. Do
Right.
we
I
want
think
5 or do we want 10?
why don't we
Yeah,
do
if
the
we can get
10?
it.
Yeah, we can get the 10 years.
10.
Just a little more guesswork involved in the 10.
Five,
I think it's a good point because actually, I think the reason we do have some funding available is because in the early years with AATA, the rate was lower than it is now. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so that's how you ended up, the township ended up with some funding remaining. Like in the early years, it was like around 380,000. Now it's close to 6.
Yeah,
Almost double.
and we're gonna have that Headley issue again. It's gonna
Yeah,
be
you may
reapplied,
have
so.
that. You never know what's gonna happen.
There's lots of factors to
Yeah,
consider
Right,
Right,
in terms of the millage, but.
and so you do need to be conservative.
okay. And then the other bullet point that's specific to that finance issue was to provide a budget projections and revenue and expenditure projections to provide services. So I read that and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, that seems to be connected to what we think their costs are gonna be.
And we
for
do
us.
that. We put together a budget as part of the township budget. We did a 2-year budget for this year and next year as part of our process.
Okay, I did not see that.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't know anything about our budget.
yeah, we did a
Okay.
budget.
So if you could share that with me as a committee member, I
Well,
appreciate it.
that's what I was gonna say, Kim, it was part of, if we didn't do it, it was part of the
Budget.
township's
Yeah, we
budget
did
process to do a 2-year projection.
But
for
we
what
can
the
provide-
But this is a specific charge to our committee.
Right.
Yeah.
They're looking for something else.
Yeah.
Provide a budget, projections and revenue and expenditure projections to
And,
provide service.
and it was provided to the board, but not necessarily from this committee as part of the budget for transit. But we can get that information to you.
Okay, because I remember Jessica Flintoff specifically talking about a budget. Now, she didn't use those words in particular,
Yeah.
but that was, her expression was that she expected us to come up with a budget. And I'm sitting there thinking,
Well, we
at the
did,
time, I was thinking, well,
yeah.
I can't do the budget. I don't even know enough about our internal. But then when I went back and looked at the charge, I thought, oh, okay. So anyway,
But what, we can get that information for our next meeting.
okay.
Okay, and Ken, if you could do the projections for
I guess the
you
way,
and
the
Marie.
way I would interpret that, Kim, is,
I wrote it.
it's to build it out further, right? Because I think the budget that we did for, and Joyce, correct me if I'm misrepresenting or misremembering this, but was based largely on the projections from AATA in terms of the purchase of service costs. Because they had given us, here's the next 2 years of purchase of service costs
Yes, I
projected.
saw that last.
So I think that's as far as we go with our budget projections is in terms of building it out. But I think what I sense is there's a request to sort of go further. And part of that will be answered by the figures we get
projections.
from
Right.
the
Yeah.
two providers. But if we were to work in some of these other costs, that might add to that. If we are budgeting each year for some kind of education sort of effort to help residents know about public transportation.
Yeah.
Or if there's some other services that we're building in, like a Go Pass program or something like that, those costs wouldn't be included in the figures from AATA or WAVE.
So I'm remembering the discussion, and it was a specific reference that you, Joyce, and Jessica were talking about, you getting with our account and talking about the
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah,
And I don't know all of these aspects. I'm getting out of my pay grade here, but I just wanted to be able to, be
yeah,
able to not go before the board again and feel like I don't know anything about this, so I want to be
Yeah.
prepared.
I think what she was referring to, I think once we get Ken's information and if we're talking about a budget beyond what WAVE and AATA is providing as part of our budget, then we can certainly build on that, but I would just review it with Plant Moran, who is our internal finance director at this
Gotcha.
point in time, and just see if they think there's anything more we need to do or make any adjustments to it. So we can always have them review it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, one thing I noticed is not on our agenda that we do need to include is public comment time.
Yes. But are there any other comments from any of you before we move on? Okay. All right, we're ready.
All right, Rob Pattinson. Go ahead and mute.
Thank you. Rob Pattinson, Scio Township resident. Just 3 things. Ken, when you do your report on bus stops with a sidewalk, bus stops without a sidewalk, bus stops without a lead walk, could you do that in a map format as well? So that we can see exactly, and you could do it in a map where you had a code, where you would put a code next to a particular bus stop, and that would tell us if it was a stop without a sidewalk or without a lead walk. And that way we could see exactly where all these stops are. And Kim and Will, could you guys put together a map of exactly where you're talking about, the sidewalks and the bus stops in the Dexter Wagner area, and get that into the minutes so that everybody's literally on the same page about what particular area, because I'm trying to picture some of that area in my mind, and I got a little bit lost, so that would help if you had a map of that. And then June 3rd is happening very, very soon. I would suggest a mailer announcing all of this new service. I guarantee you that it's really only Pam and I who know about all of this upcoming service. Pam has the newsletter, but that only reaches a fraction of the township residents. So I would suggest a comprehensive flyer announcing all this new service, and include what all the normal services are, like waves, door to door stuff, so that the people not necessarily in the Jackson Road area, but in greater Scio Township, will know that there is public transit available even in some of our remote areas, and put that in a flyer to everybody in the township. You've got $500,000 to work with. Seems to me that if that was, I think flyers I've seen in the past are between 5,000 and 9,000, that might be a valuable way of getting the word out. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Anyone else like to speak?
So I would just like to say, Rob, I have no talent in drawing. I don't mind meeting with Will to help whoever we get to illustrate. I don't mind doing that,
We
but
don't have to engage in a conversation about
Okay.
public comments. And
sorry.
At this
Fair
time, there's no
enough.
other hands raised.
There's no one else?
No.
Okay. All right.
I didn't mean to
Rob, say
cut you off,
anything else?
Kim, but-
No, you're
Let's see, did Rob have something else he was trying to say?
Rob, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just said fair enough to Kim. I totally understand the drawing issue. But if
We'll
you,
solve the problem.
yeah, exactly. Perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. Any other comments? And if not, is there a motion to adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Okay, all right.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Support.
All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.